You can read all about it inside the Standard today. On the side, but bank fear, more than half debtors will default. A central bank survey show majority of those likely to fail to pay their loans for more than 3 months are individuals and traders. And this story is on page 3 of the Standard this morning. Also, EU law change pushing oil companies to Africa. Right, this is regarding oil change and the renewable energies there. It seems Africa is a dumping place, so you can read all about it inside the Financial Standard that comes in handy for you every Tuesday. Get all the wiser as far as finances is concerned. Ministry pushing for KRA to waive university debt. They've been pushing for the 61 billion shillings waiver that they seek the legislators to give the thumbs up. Now also KRA with the statutory obligations that they've not been compliant to. Now this is what they're seeking KRA to waive those particular obligations that have not been complied to. And you have the story on page 11 of the Standard this morning. Fuel price trims jams in Nigeria, and Arteta cooking rise to deliver at top level. You have that story on the sports pages of the Standard this morning. That is what we have on the teaser on top here. You can grab a copy of today's Standard. Right, let's see what the Daily Nation is holding for us. Africa's moment is a splash. Africa Climate Summit. In the biggest gathering on climate, Africa speaks with one voice, calling for action rather than empty talk and promises, as hundreds of millions across the continent bear the brunt of what scientists have called, quote-unquote, the biggest catastrophe of our times. You have a story well laid out for you on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the Daily Nation today, and you have the same picture that was on the front page of the Standard as well here on the front page of the Daily Nation. President Ruto, Sierra Leone, President Julius Maada, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, and Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, Rosalinda Soipan-Tuya, during the Africa Climate Summit 2023 at KICC in Nairobi yesterday. That story continues inside the Daily Nation. And some of the sentiments that were expressed yesterday, beginning with the President, he said, climate change is not just an abstract composition. It has been proven by science and emerging experience. This is why we are not here to catalog grievances and list problems. We are here to talk about solutions. Also, we have Mithika Mwenda, Executive Director of PACCHA. He says, quote-unquote, the outcome of this summit should not only provide solutions to people whose livelihoods have been affected by climate change and its false solutions, but also reflect African realities, and the core of it should be adaptation. And that story also is inside the Daily Nation today. Mr. John Kerry, U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, he says, quote-unquote, Africa can benefit and the Global South can benefit only if the carbon market grows. It has to grow into billions in order to work effectively, and for that we need to ensure its environmental integrity. Also, we have Soipan-Tuya, Environment Cabinet Secretary, saying, quote-unquote, climate change has entered a new era. It is not just about an environmental or developmental angle, but it now addresses climate change in the context of climate justice. Those were just but a few of some of the sentiments that were expressed yesterday, and this is the Daily Nation. All right, we have Amadi being accused of meddling in fake gold case. Dubai-based firm claims senior judicial officers pushing to have case dismissed, and you have the story on page 12 of the Daily Nation today. Farms surrendered 3 grabbed islands in Kwale, EACC to file a recovery suit for a fourth. That is a story that you want to follow on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. The Star, Ruto, welcome to the future. That is the splash. You can see him hard at work there, getting his hands dirty, grinning the seat of power ahead of Africa Climate Summit 2023 at KICC in Nairobi yesterday. This is a labor of love, as they say it, and ambitious. No time to catalog grievances, problems, but rather to unlock solutions. That is what we have as a flag there. There is relief for Kidero, who's off the hook as he settles 427 million shillings tax dispute with KRA. That story continues on page 6 of the Star this morning. Still on the front page of the Star, there's an appeal after appeal. No luck for Machakos defiler who tried to get his life sentence quashed, and also Celtic preaching. Arrest of Celtic leader Paul Mackenzie saved over 100 lives. This is what the state is saying. You can follow the story on page 2. And that's how it looks. This is a People Daily. Climate change. Counties get 44 billion shillings boost. Talks bear dividend. First ever Africa Summit opens with pledge to fund devolved governments' climate action as 7 billion shillings released there. You have the story on page 4 to 7, 10, 11 and 14 of the People Daily. UK also has granted Africa 7 billion shillings on this particular fight of climate change. Who has given what? This is also just broken down here for you. We have institutions. World Bank 22.5 billion shillings. Danida 13.4 billion shillings. That is a Denmark's NGO, or the social side of the mission here. Also we have KFW 5 billion shillings. We have CEDA 2.1 billion shillings. Netherlands 1.5 billion shillings. And it continues even as the conference continues this week. We shall be realizing more and more of pledges coming to the fore. And we can see people coming out in force yesterday, led by the president there, to join the other delegates in the convention. I leave it for you to decipher that. This is a People Daily this morning. Rule change opens door for tech giants. Removal of 30% ownership law paves way for Amazon, Microsoft entry. You have the story on page 15 of the People Daily. And also, if you want to get to know what are some of the tenders laid out inside the People Daily, my government today is on People Daily. You can grab a copy for you to get all these tenders that have been advertised. When job loss leads to success, read all about that on page 25 inside the People Daily. Yuko katika giza. Solanyeti katika ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. That is a splash today. Mazungumzo ya mapatano hayana nafasi bayana kwake. Kalonzo aonekana kupendelewa. That is Martha Karua there on the sharpest edge of the horns of dilemma there as far as this bipartisan talks is concerned. Right? Is she in the dark? You can read the rest of the details inside Taifa Leo as well. And a smiley face of Kidero, sasa yuko huru. You can follow the story on page 3 of Taifa Leo this morning. Malala Barasa wa Zika tofauti. You can follow the story on page 4 of Taifa Leo this morning. Wetangula atetea mambo ni tatu. Adai rais hakukusudia kuwaua wafisadi wanao fisilisha taifa. Hili kwake kusema kauli yake maarufu. You can read the rest of the details inside Taifa Leo as well. Mabadiliko ya tabianchi, pesa nzito ya mwagika. That is the story that you can follow on page 5. Is all about climate change. Seems the business side of it, the micro on the MSMEs are adversely affected as far as servicing their loans is concerned. 60% of small businesses can't repay their loans. Defaults linked to interest rate spikes. This is what the Business Daily is holding for us this morning. And female enterprises hit hard by this. That is the story that you want to follow. 6 out of 10 micro and small enterprises had defaulted on their loans by the end of June, reflecting a tough business environment characterized by a spike in interest rates at the prices of goods and services. A new report by the MSME Tracker Survey published by the Central Bank and other partners, which tracks financial inclusion among small businesses, shows that 60.7% of small businesses had defaulted on their loans in June this year. an increase from 42.8% in October 2022. This is a Business Daily Splash today. IMF to review 80.2 billion shillings climate-linked loan in November. You can follow the story there on the ticker. Safaricom signs 15 billion shillings loan deal with lenders for growth. And also foreigners buy 668 million shillings Nairobi Security Exchange shares in August. A good taking up of signs there as far as the shares is concerned. Bugbears and fears and trepidations were there that we have the capital flight from the NSE. And this is good news. You can follow the story on page 14 of the Business Daily. 10 firms join the battle for betting billions. Is another story there. We'll lay that for you inside the Business Daily as well. A light moment here. We can see President William Ruto and African Development Bank President Akinwumi Adesina sharing a light moment on the sidelines of the Africa Climate Summit at KICC. Ruto unlocked 7.3 billion shillings climate grants for counties. That is a story that you want to follow inside the Business Daily this morning. Let's cross over borders to Uganda, where passport fraud nightmare is also spreading into East Africa. Uganda passport fraud nightmare in East Asia, not East Africa. I beg your pardon there. It's a dilemma, and you can follow the story there on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor this morning. If you're waking up in Uganda, back to the roots. Karamoja annual cultural show starts, and you can see how they were getting jiggy yesterday there. Security forces recover more bombs in Kampala, and police caution Bobi Wine on following rules. Right. The writing is on the wall for Bobi Wine there. You can follow the story on page 3 of the Daily Monitor there. Also, we have Rainbow Magazine. It's all about ballet, which has taken Suma places. Read all about that inside the Daily Monitor there in Uganda. I wanted to say that also the tenders are inside the Daily Monitor as well. You can grab a copy of that. In Tanzania, crackdown on fuel hoarders. This is an East African menace, and now the government is clamping down on the hoarders. The Energy and Water Utilities Regulatory Authority has put 3 fuel filling stations on suspension and another 16 under investigation for illegal trading practices, including hoarding. And this story continues on page 3 of the Citizen this morning. Contracts worth 17.5 trillion shillings signed in 5 years. Expectations high as AGRF kicks off in Dar. And young writer inspired by President Samia. You can read all about her inside the Citizen in Tanzania. In Rwanda, Rwanda's tougher forest bill starts public debate. The bill prohibits harvesting, use and sale of immature trees. Well, that is polls, and you can follow the story on page 3 of the New Times. And Kagame names new parastatal heads. Their faces are all here. The newly appointed officials, Top Rao, Lambert Dushimimana. We have also the governor of the Western Province, Tesi Rusagara, the chief executive of the Agasiro Development Fund, Omar Muyaneza, the chief executive of Wasak Group, and on the bottom row we have Armand Zingiro, the chief executive of Rwanda Energy Group, Gisele Omuhumuza, the managing director of Wasak, that is Utilities Limited, and also Kapofore Tangungira, the chairperson of Rura Regulatory Board, and Evariste Rugigana, the Director General of Rwanda Utilities Regulatory Authority, Rura. They were all announced in a statement from the office of the Prime Minister, and you can read all about them inside the New Times if you're waking up in Rwanda this morning. The East African this week is all in this splash. It's all about East Africa blocking new push to keep out mitumba imports. Uganda, Kenya are taking after Rwanda, which effected the ban, a decision fraught with political and economic repercussions. This story continues on page 4 of the East African this morning. And DR Congo's unwanted peace mission. Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo blame radical groups of fueling protests against peacekeepers. That story continues on page 5 of the East African this morning. I will show you what we have on the front page of Economist on the sidebar as we continue. But here it is. It's all about artificial intelligence. Voted how artificial intelligence will affect the elections of 2024 is what is on the front page of The Economist this morning. Paranoid nationalism and corruption, the property price paradox, arms control, Oppenheimer's nightmare, and Chile 50 years after the coup. And also the Newsweek, forget keto, intermittent fasting, and Ozempic. The facts about what works and what doesn't are still elusive. You can read all about that inside the Newsweek, the search for the perfect diet for the healthy births. That will be also a rich stream of information tucked away in the Newsweek this week. Foreign Affairs is out as well, the desperation of the dictators. And you can read all about that inside the current copy of the Foreign Affairs. And also we have the Harvard Business Review as well. Reskilling in the age of the artificial intelligence. New approaches for managers and employees. That is tucked away on page 56 of the latest copy of the Harvard Business Review. And Time Magazine, the oceans issue, the most important place on earth, even as we are centering our focus on climate change, the blue economy. It's vital with the coral reefs as well, endangered by the human factors right now of pollution. That is what we have as a latest copy there. The week, trouble at the museum, the case of missing treasures. This is all about what is happening in the UK, and the stolen treasures from the museum as well is a bigger story right now. And also, too late, probing question there, how the Republican alternatives to Trump are trying to open up the race. This is what the week is holding this week, so to speak, and all tucked away inside the week. Shenzi, that is what we have inside the Star this morning as the editorial cartoon. And you've been seeing that particular exchange of words between the Kotu Secretary General and Right Honorable Raila Odinga as far as his side of the support is concerned, where he's leaning towards the government right now, which Raila Odinga is raising hesitation with. You can follow the editorial cartoon inside the Star this morning. This is what we have inside the Standard today. The coups in West Africa under the barrel are some of the voters right now. Where is democracy? And this is what also Stano has drawn for us. Well, due to climate change, I cannot predict the weather anymore. Weather focus today, the climate change 2023. Whether or not forecast. That is what we have. There is a weather. All right, that's your weather. Now, the Africa Climate Summit kick started yesterday with President William Ruto, who officially opened the summit, setting the stage for a solution-based conversation. The head of state, who referred to Africa as a future of climate action, called for a shift from a victim mentality to solution-based deliberations. Ruto challenged delegates attending the summit not to leave without proper mechanism in place of how Africa could take its position as leader in the decarbonization agenda. Peter Nzuki attended the official opening ceremony and filed the following report.
The African Climate Week began on a high note with President William Ruto, who officially opened the summit, setting the stage for a conversation that will lean more towards the opportunities that the continent can offer and not Africa being a victim of the climate crisis.
We must be alert to the fact that they can sometimes blind us to the bigger picture. Delivering prosperity and well-being for Africa's growing population without pushing the world deeper into climate disaster is not just an abstract proposition or a mere wishful thinking. It is a real possibility proven by science and affirmed by emerging experience.
The head of state further saying that Africa was the future in the fight against the climate crisis.
You have not just stepped into a conference hall. You have entered the future, a future ripe with potential, driven by global partnerships committed to African prosperity, inclusive growth, and a livable planet for all of us.
Again, the president said that it was the high time that conversations regarding Africa were shifted from the north versus the south, and again, Africa fronting the solutions that they can offer and tap into the opportunities that the regreening is presenting.
This is no ordinary summit. We are not here just to talk about Africa or climate change in the usual way, which often accentuates our divisions. You all remember the North versus South, developed versus developing, polluters versus victims, and the whole of that conversation.
His sentiments were echoed by stakeholders attending this conference, reaffirming that in the next few days, the conversations will be on how Africa can be at the center in the fight against the climate crisis.
He made it very clear that when you look at the entire world, 30% of the minerals that are needed to drive what is called a decarbonization pathway are in this continent. Whether you're talking lithium, you're talking nickel, you're talking cobalt, they're in this continent. But the continent has been losing out for quite a very long time because value is not added to these minerals.
Showcasing different exhibitions right here at the KICC. Of course, it's one of the reasons that shows that Africa is ready again to present some of the adaptation measures into the fight against the climate crisis. However, the African Union did acknowledge that the monies that were promised to the developing world are yet to be released. But the stakeholders and delegates attending this conference and summit say that will not be their main agenda. However, human rights activists feel that the loss and damage agenda should not be left behind because there are human rights that have been violated as a result of the climate action.
Promised resources by the developed countries' parties has not yielded tangible results, and even the $100 billion that you promised during the during the Paris Agreement, COP21, up to now, we haven't seen anything.
We need to think a little bit more seriously about what does it mean to live in a climate fragile environment, and particularly what it means for people in Kenya. I think 1 in 4 of us just don't get enough to eat. Our systems are collapsing, and therefore we must see this as an emergency.
The conference continues until Friday this week. Purity Nzuki, KTN News.
Now, the 3-day Africa Climate Summit kicked off in Nairobi amid peaceful protest against the ongoing talks. The climate activists from the African continent who took to the streets claim some of the policies that will be proposed at the summit will continue to exploit African resources while concentrating power and wealth in the hands of advanced countries. They want countries responsible for climate change to finance the mitigation measures. Brenda Zeda Radiru has more.
carrying placards with different messages to delegates attending the Africa Climate Change Summit. Chants from hundreds of activists from across the African continent filled the air as they took to the streets of Nairobi to protest against the 3-day Africa Climate Summit being held at the KICC. With messages such as, "Let's talk, more action for climate change," "Unlock the financing," and "No nature, no future," the activists marched from Nyayo Stadium to the Green Park bus terminus, a few meters from KICC where the summit is happening. They converged here for what they christened the Africa People's Climate Assembly.
They need to stop sitting in the conferences while we are the ones who are hurting out here. They need to create policies that involve Africans and the youth on the ground, because they're the ones who suffer the most.
We expect and are demanding of our leaders to genuinely and truly represent our interests inside those discussions and deliberations.
They want advanced countries to pay for the huge damage done to the African continent, pastoralists who continue to bear the brunt of climate change. In the recent past, Kenya has been devastated by the worst drought, which has been attributed to global warming. Severe drought is projected to leave about 5.4 million people in Kenya without adequate access to food and water between March and June 2023.
Communities and indigenous people's rights need to be protected and need to be cared after in the pursuit of just energy transitions across the world.
It really is unrealistic for us to go back to the same people who caused the problem for the solution. That's the reason why they're giving solutions that continue to allow them to pollute.
According to the activists, the summit lacks legitimacy and shows no indication of addressing the real and worsening climate crisis caused by adverse countries, and are demanding for an end to the use of fossil fuel, and further demanded for more action from delegates attending the meeting rather than what they termed as boardroom conversations.
This current climate summit is a carbon summit because the fossil companies who have been polluting and continue to pollute are using carbon markets as a solution to allow them to continue polluting, and yet they tell the African continent not to drill for fossil fuels.
Sorting out fossil fuels is not going to sort out the whole problem. We need to look at the contribution of small agriculture into this.
We want to connect the dignity of humanity with climate justice that says we want a system that is fair, which is just for everyone.
The activists say they will use the Africa People's Assembly to assert a stronger united voice on climate issues affecting about 1.2 billion people, even though the African continent contributes about 4% of global emission. Brenda Zeda Radido, KTN News.
All right, as conversations on climate mitigation were happening at KICC, other side dialogues were going on at a different venue on how African countries can leverage on climate change to attain sustainable development goals, especially in alleviating hunger levels by coming up with climate-resilient programs and sustainable financing. Berlin Walioula, attended the signed conversation and now reports.
Climate change is already having a significant impact on Africa's ecosystems, economy, and societies. In the recent past, millions of Africans have been displaced during the prolonged drought in the Horn of Africa, experienced destruction from Cyclone Freddy, and many catastrophes have happened in the continent. Drought, floods, and wildfires are said to worsen if the Earth's temperatures rise, and it's time for Africa to have conversations on how to mitigate climate and work towards attaining sustainable development goals.
It's a critical moment for Africa where the world is really listening to us. And so we want to make sure that we have enough space to amplify voices, farmers' voices, children's voices, women's voices, because climate change affects everybody, but it affects us all differently. And the actions that we need to take to get us over the line to reach our SDGs are very specific and very contextual.
The African Climate Summit is focusing on 5 key issues, one being climate finance for adaptation and loss and damage. Research shows that Africa will require more than $500 billion in funding for adaptation, and the summit is one way for leaders and civil societies to push for finance reforms.
Countries, the developed countries, which have caused the majority of climate impact, which is now being experienced by Africa. So they're the ones, in the interest of climate justice, you have to put up the money to allow Africa to adapt and to develop the clean energy that's so desperately needed.
Another key conversation happening at the summit is the Africa energy transition, where African countries should mobilize funds to increase access to clean energy and renewable energy. The summit is also focusing on how to have sustainable and equitable cities and nature-based sustainable agriculture. The climate summit intends to come up with a roadmap to lower carbon emissions.
That we're running out of climate space now to meet the 1.5 degree goal that was agreed in Paris in 2015. To achieve that goal and to keep climate damages from escalating really beyond our control into the climate emergency, we need to cut emissions of greenhouse gases globally by nearly 50% by the end of this decade.
After the summit, a declaration termed as Nairobi Declaration will be made, and it will be a crucial moment for the continent's collective efforts towards mitigating the impacts of climate change.
The most important of why it has to be in Africa, because Africa is a global power, and I think that the fact that we're doing it here can show that Africa United can get its message out.
Beldin Walyeula, KTN News.
Now, the first day of Africa Climate Summit was dominated by another contrasting image of what climate-friendly mobility should be, even though the host president drove himself to the summit in an electric car. The presence of fuel guzzlers dominated the inaugural summit. Noakip Kumoe has more.
In a sign of goodwill and leading by example, President William Ruto embarked on a self-drive from State House to the Kenyatta International Convention Center in a yellow electric car. Thereafter, major arrivals made no effort to walk the talk in terms of reducing carbon emissions, with fuel combustible engine entourages arriving one after the other. Even though sights of electric cars remained rare, a small solar-powered car made an appearance, though the driver did not have accreditation to the event. The infamous electric bus plying Nairobi Central Business District made a drop, with some delegates alighting meters away from KICC. Passenger cars dominate carbon dioxide emissions produced by the transportation sector worldwide at 39%, followed by medium and heavy trucks, shipping and aviation. The least emissions from the sector comes from rail, standing at 3%. Noakip Kimboi, KTN News.
Right, it's really flying in the face of what should be as far as climate smart is concerned, coming with Gazelle as well. And we've seen protesters really also raising special umbrage with that, especially on the fossil fuel as well. We have our guests already in studio with us, and today is actually, I'm in the Senate. I should say I'm in the chambers today, holding court with all the senators there in the House. We have a Senator of Tana River, we have a Senator of Nyamira, we have a nominated Senator, Tabitha Mutinda, and also the Senator of Makueni. And so we shall be discussing a raft of issues as far as also climate change is concerned and how the counties are affected adversely by that, the efforts to make sure that also some finances go to the counties. As far as we know, the president has given the indication that grants over 7 billion shillings will be going to the counties, 44 billion shillings. So how will that also be streamlined and shaken into place as far as counties is concerned? But let's just get introductory remarks from them so that we can get to hear what their sentiments as far as the climate change summit is concerned here in Nairobi, if any of them have attended this, and how also the president has actually been very switched on as far as the awareness of environment, social governance is concerned, and people, planet, and also the profit is concerned. Let's hear from Mungatana. Good morning.
Good
from
morning.
Tana River.
Thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Yes.
You've been in attendance or not? You can tell us. Or you were saying off camera,
yes,
that we are looking good. Kenya is looking good. Just looking at the feel and looking at the pictures there, the sights and sounds, the feel and flavor of it, we are looking good.
Yeah, we thank God that the very thing that we had hoped would happen has happened. A few months ago, the president was in Midrand, South Africa, to open for us the Pan-African Parliament. And he talked about his suggestions on what should happen in the climate change space. And he said that he's going to invite Kenya in Africa and the world in September for the discussions around climate change in Africa. And he did it. We've had a very good attendance rate. 23 heads of state in one country in Africa. It's not something that happens every day. And so I want to take this opportunity to congratulate His Excellency the President and all the people who have put in so much work. And I know a lot of work has gone into this. I also wanted to say it is a very good gesture to see the President driving the small vehicle, which is carbon friendly. We may not all be there, but it is an indication that the future is possible. That it is possible for us to actually use carbon friendly, fuels. Fuels that will not harm the climate, fuels that will not harm the environment we live in. Although I've seen that your people in the media have taken on the other arrivals and saying that they are not keeping to the to the theme of the whole climate change, reducing use of fossil fuel and all that, I think it's a step in the right direction. And we need to be aware that everything starts with a discussion and then implementation follows. So the idea is there, and I hope implementation will follow. Going forward, people will use more and more environmentally friendly means of transport in Kenya and other parts of the world, so that we can actually implement what we are talking about. I know the former Vice President of America, Al Gore, he was a very big fighter in this space of reducing fossil fuel emissions. And then the media found out that maybe his house isn't all that. He still uses these big vehicles and so on. And they really punctured his message, which to me is also a message to us. What we are saying, we must implement. Let us live what we are saying. If we say that we need to reduce fossil fuel emissions, then let us do so. We must follow our words with action. We may not all be perfect, we may not all be there, but I think this climate change discussion is a very good beginning for Africa, and it is taking us where we need to go. Thank you very much.
Right. Dan Mazo, let's hear from you. You saw the Gazla as well. I thought you'd pick up on it.
And I like the pictures in the Standard. You know, if you look at the pictures in the Standard from the capital to the village, you know,
from the capital from the village,
the capital to the village. You can see in part of the Standard the trees which have been cut. And you remember recently the president went on and said we can now cut trees, although that matter went to court. It caused a lot of confusion because he had not explained which are the plantations. And again, also, even if there are any plantations in Kenya, there are quite a few. Instead of spending so much money in a conference like this, I believe half of this money should go into developing seedlings. The biggest problem in the country, there are no seedlings for trees, and they have not even been budgeted for, and even in the drier parts of the country, it's more complicated. You need to develop trees which are resilient in those places, and then you go and plant a tree, but how do you water it? Then you plant, and once the season goes, the tree also dries up, and you have spent a lot of money. There hasn't been any serious planning in the country, other than the talk in conferences. There's no real action on ground, and the real action is, first of all, in the drier parts of the country, you must have dams so that you'll be able to water the trees after you plant them. Researchers have to come up with a resilient tree which will grow in the desert areas, the drier areas of the country, which is much larger by themselves. They came up with a mathenge tree, which became more injurious to the environment than conserving the environment. And its thorns will be so dangerous to animals, to people, although it was developed, some times back. If you see the damage it has done in the drier parts of the country, is more. So we need to develop trees which can be useful, which can be useful to the people, which can conserve the climate, which can be a source of food for animals. And if you look at what is happening in Africa and what is happening in the developed world, it's very different. Everybody has been trained the culture of conserving forests, planting forests, self-discipline. They don't just cut trees. President Moy used to have a theory of, if you cut one tree, you plant three. I think you should plant. He did his best. So there's a lot to be done in Africa. Serious investment has to be done here, serious budget. So all these world well-wishers should send enough donations here to groups and organized groups, and even a bigger talk of climate change. There has been a little bit of highlighting, but we are yet, to do more. This is just highlighted. I hope it's not going to end with this. There must be a real investment in cash in terms of government budget and in an effort to plant trees. Personally, I do renovate government forests in Makueni, the ones which are near my environment. I make sure that we plant trees every season. And there must be a personal effort from every individual. I have made sure that over 10% of my land is covered by trees, and indigenous trees which can be used for timber later in future. So I really want us to have the real issues. Where is the budget? What is the plan? The Forest Service pretends to conserve forests. In Makueni, the few forests we have, they have been invaded or sold out quietly or secret or banned, the forest fires, by the same officers, so that they can now sell the remains. Government has to get very serious so that the Forest Service, conserves forests, and the police officers, they are really going to help. But we want a budget, we want the seedlings.
Right, we want the budget, we want the seedlings, but also talking about the seedlings, the budget, Tabitha, we can see there's a climate change. Counties will get 44 billion shillings boost, just looking at the business, the people daily there. And also there's a breakdown of who has given what. UK has given 7.1 billion shillings, and this is the second day. We are waiting for more pledges as well, as far as this kitty is concerned. But this is a good boost. First ever Africa Summit opens with pledges to fund devolved government's climate action. As 7 billion shillings released. Well, you'll be the people now who will be overseeing this particular fund.
Yeah, very, very correct. And good morning. Nice having us this great morning. And I want to start by really thanking the President, His Excellency William Ruto, for being a champion on matters climate change. As my colleague has also mentioned, a few months ago, we were in Midrand. I also had an opportunity to attend. And this was one of the greatest moments, because when our president stood up to make his address, it was a world address, because the applaud and the confidence and what he was able to table was very much embraced from the different continents, something that we also as a country we pride in. And so we want to really thank him for coming out boldly and pushing this agenda. He says in his remarks very clearly that Africa now should take charge for its future and for its generations to come and to be, because we realize in Africa here we have opportunity, especially matters carbon credits, unlike in the Western countries whereby, I mean, 50%, more than 50% is pollution. Here we have great opportunities, and the leaders are led by the president are taking charge in terms of this particular guidance. I've seen you've talked about the 44 billion and the 7 billion released. Yes, and as Senate, one of our key mandates is oversight. But what we need to really appreciate is where we are. We've been able to pitch it out, we've been able to come out, and we have institutions or banks that have come and been able to pledge what they've been able to pledge. This is positivity. This is now where we are moving towards climate change, financial achievements, and different revenues. This is where we want to be. Because this is the next big thing. This is the next move. And as Kenya, as a country, we've embraced it. This is very much positivity, something that also I still continue and will applaud the president for these moves. Was it not also for his boldness coming out and championing this, then where would we be? Would we really be having this kind of fundings from all these organizations? This is very positive. I like it when my brother Manzo says that the government should come and do the funding for the tree planting, because for us to be able to achieve in matters climate change, tree planting is a very key factor. But you remember, Dibal, that in our first, when we settled in this government, one of our key manifestos was tree planting in all schools, in all institutions, a target of about 15 billion trees. And this is actually being encouraged in our schools, because that is where we have quite a number of big spaces. And at the same time, we are bringing up a generation that will be able to understand matters climate change, will be able also to practice this not only in their institutions of learning, but also in their homes and any other places that they want to move this to. So this is a very positive platform that we've been able to set, and with the strategy of tree planting that is in currently placed, then it's a big boost. It's a big achievement as far as matters climate change are concerned. I'm so happy that now this is the second mobility that the president has been able to showcase. They started with the motorbikes. I remember he was with our governor, Nairobi governor, when they were riding the electric motorbike, something, we pride in, because these are some of the things that we had also mentioned that we are bringing aboard. When we say also cutting of cost in terms of the fuel, we are bringing in electric bikes. On Saturday, I think we saw, and it's so practical on it, the president took in and drove the electric car. Wonderful thing, he's there, he's much more actual. He's resonating with the real things of the people. He's doing it himself and make it so practical, something that is so great. So we've been able to be more practical and bring out the products, like the the small car and the bike, and we are also having arranged, because I was in KICC yesterday, and I'm happy because we are seeing different products in terms of that take care of the climate change, like for example the firewood. We have alternatives for firewood that are in place. We have the different types of jikos that have come up. We have a commodity called kiko that this is a gas that you just need to refill, and there's no emissions that are affecting the air. So there's a lot of positivity. The youth have also been given an opportunity so that they are able to see which innovatives they can be able to bring in future. Women, it's not really been so much out there, as I can say from where I sit, but we'll continue championing such that the factor for women is also much considered, because we've also seen men are so much upfront and when it matters climate change. But I believe with the strategies that are in place, we are going to be able to have great opportunities for also our women in this nation. Right.
Let's hear from Okongo Mogini, because Tabitha has talked glowingly about the president and him riding in of course, the e-mobility. And one of the panelists was saying, oh no, that even the e-mobility, the car itself has to be yellow, the UDA colors at the end of the day. But she's failed also to recognize that there were fewer guzzlers yesterday. I don't know if Senator Tabitha also went with a Gazla yesterday, or she went with that, e-mobility itself, because we've not seen a picture of you. We'll try and track down and find out, are you living a spirit? Or you just...
should have been yesterday.
You should, in fact, you should have taken pictures of that. Electric cars. With a scooter, that scooter, electric scooter that we've seen out there.
I walked from Parliament to KICC.
You see?
I actually nicely walked.
Yeah, you came with a Gazla to Parliament, and you walked to KICC. Let's hear from Okongo.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, you are doing very well.
Hey.
I like the way you are moderating
I'm the speaker today.
the debate in the Senate.
chambers.
You're doing very well. You know, Debal, there is nothing as good as having guests in your country. In 2007, when I hosted the Commonwealth Lawyers Conference, and I had 5 chief justices of various countries, including the one of England, here, you feel good. So really, if there is a moment, I feel like I'm a proud Kenyan, patriotic, not looking at party affiliations. It's now. You know, mobilizing international guests, 20 of them sitting in your KICC to host such a conference really makes us feel proud as Kenyans. So we say really kudos to the organizers, those who have brought all these people here, the security forces, you know, to ensure that our guests are staying, you know, their security taken care of. The business that has been brought to the country, it's a big thing. And I think we all wish, you know, that we can have many of such events in the country, because that's how you support businesses. This is a good thing. But other than that, I also hope that as a country we can walk the talk. I don't think we had 23 presidents, maybe about 5. I had my learned friend Mungatana saying 23, but nevertheless, it's a good mobilization.
More good to be here today.
Yes, good mobilization. So I think mine is really to ask the government to walk the talk. You know, climate change is not a joke. If you see what's happening in Taiwan, if you saw the floods in Taiwan, you saw what's happening.
The Haikui.
Yes.
Ikawa.
In Florida. The statistics that tell you that in East Africa, about just East Africa region alone, 18 million people stare at starvation because of our failure to take care of environment, climate change. The risks about what may happen in South Asia in another 50 or so years is scary. So this is something that we should all take seriously. We are doing it not for us, but for our future generation. And I wish the government can now start being very, very proactive in the ban. You know, we can generate wind power from northeastern Kenya and feed it to the national lines. We can emphasize the importance of having solar. There are countries where you can't build a house unless you incorporate solar. Renewable energy is what we need now, you know, so that as a country we lead by example. The vehicle we saw the president riding is good, but I'm sure that was for the cameras. The ministers, as you have just shown, they came with the Gazlas. But you know, we can put in place some measures. If you go to London, the mayor of London, I think it's called Sadiq Khan, has put in place measures. He has put a zone they call ULEX, ultra low emission zone, where only vehicles that are either hybrid or fully electric drive into London free. If you are not in that category, you pay about 1250 euros. That's about 1,800 or 2,000 or thereabout. And then they have also ensured that there is good security in London. People can ride their bikes. You come, park it somewhere, and you continue your business. Public transport. You know, if you put good transport from where I stay, I don't need to drive my car to the city. You know that the current president of US, when he was a senator, Biden, used a train every day. All the time he has been a senator for 32 years.
From Delaware to Washington.
To Washington. Because when you do that, you are making very few Kenyans to drive their vehicles into the city. That's how you contribute in ensuring that there is least emission to the atmosphere. So as a government, we need to do something. You know, the roads we are building, you go to our friends in Tanzania, when they build a road, there is a provision for a tarmac, parallel cycling path for motorcycles. Because there are many people who like to ride their bicycles into the city, you know. So I really wish that once we have hosted this conference, our visitors have left, we are going now to start implementing seriously, not just what we have done for the show, so that as a country we can say that we are now joining the League of Nations that really care about climate change. You know, deforestation. If you cut a tree in London, you must plant another one. And you go through a rigorous process to get a license. I was driving along, I think it's called UN Avenue. And I was shocked. Gigiri. Yes. All the beautiful trees have been cut down. I mean, we cannot behave that way when we have hosted such a conference. And to ask our governors, now that they have been given money to support, you know, afforestation, planting of trees, they should also be very serious, very vigilant in ensuring that wanton cutting of trees is not allowed. Indeed. Drive to Naivasha. There used to be a forest along Kimenda there. Beautiful forest. You know, it used to make you think you are driving through one of those interstate roads in America. All those trees have been cut down, debarred. So I want to appeal to our CS, government machinery, county governments. Let's now walk the talk after we have hosted this very beautiful conference.
All right, walking the talk is where everyone is saying, is it just a talk shop? Or we can walk the talk. You can see also in Rwanda as well, they're really tough on forest bill that is starting up a public debate. You can see this is an East African thing at the end of the day. But when we're talking about talking shop or walking the talk, we need to ask questions on how we streamline or we're moving forward. SGR is one of the things that was diesel driven. There has been a debate on where we can get funds to electrify SGR. And the questions have been raised why SGR was not electrified in the first place when it was being mooted. And I saw there was 90 billion shillings, I think, in 2017 that the government was seeking so that they can electrify SGR. If we were truly in the spirit of greening the economy, that would have been the first thing that we would have done in the first place. But we have a lot on the other side of a break. Also, there is a new bill, that is the National Treasury Bill, that seeks to uncouple the Treasury from the Ministry of Finance. And all this is in an effort to try and expedite that disbursement of funds, especially to the counties. How discernibly different with this bill? This bill is being sponsored by Enoch Wambua as well. And we shall be also teasing out some of these bills here on the program. You're watching Siasa Fiesta here on Morning Prime.